couple weeks ago, me and Carla bought this Fuji apple tree and this Maya lemon tree. And it's been sitting on our front deck, obviously watering them every other day and stuff to keep them going, but really need to get them into the ground. So this part of the backyard's eventually going to be the orchard. I'm going to try and squeeze 10, maybe more trees into this area, obviously actively pruning them. This orange tree is going to be eventually pruned right down to a more manageable size where I can actually reach up and pick the fruit, not having to use a ladder. Same with the Feijoa tree on this side. So the apple tree we got is a Fuji apple tree, and it's on an MM106 rootstock, which basically this part here, from this knobby bit down, is the rootstock, and that's what dictates the height of the tree. So you can get different rootstocks to allow the tree to go really big or even smaller than this. This one will grow to about 3.5 meters tall, but I'm obviously going to actively prune it and probably keep it just like I said with the orange tree in arm's reach. The rootstock itself also has certain like disease resistance and pest resistance and stuff like that for different varieties, and this 106 variety is really good for allowing your scions, which is your variety you chose, to be able to be grafted to, which is my plan as well, to try and enhance the amount of fruit production we can get in a small space. So eventually, once this has established itself, it may take a year or two, I will try and get my hands on a couple different varieties and graft them onto this main trunk, so I can have 3 different apples grown off the one tree. The Fuji one itself is actually a really good storing apple, so it works out really well, and it ripens around autumn, so you have a decent amount of fruit through winter. It is, however, because we're in spring, November now, everything's actively growing again. A lot of the trees are going into fruit. This one itself is starting to put on new growth, and it even has a little apple here that's managed to get pollinated. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to trim that off because the amount of energy a plant can put into trying to produce its fruit is quite a lot, and we don't want that right now. Once this goes into the ground, I want it to focus on establishing roots and a good structure. So we will be, once this is in, I'll trim off this apple and I'll be trimming off other parts of the tree, but I'll explain that later. First, we need to put this root ball itself into a bucket of water. Essentially, that's going to allow any air in there or potting mix, because we have been watering it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wet all the way through. Potting mix itself, if it does dry out, it gets hydrophobic, which won't allow water to get in. We want water to penetrate all the way through to all the roots, so when it goes into the ground, it's going to mitigate a lot of the transplant shock. So first things first, fill this up, get the root ball into the water. So as you would have seen in that clip there, the amount of bubbles that was coming out, that's all trapped air that was around the roots, and that's what you don't want. Now that that's all gone, we have a nice saturated root ball. There's the difference between a saturated root ball being in a controlled environment and drowning your plant over time with constant watering and causing an anaerobic environment. This isn't going to happen. This is just ensuring that we won't get transplant shock. Now, we need to dig a hole 2 to 3 times the size of the current root ball, but no deeper. It doesn't need to grow down, it needs to grow out and grow strong. So if we go there, 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 it's almost like a stamp. That's the size we want. All right. Now we need to get to digging. Now I'm going to start sweating. While I'm digging, I'm going to leave that soaking. Oy! Because we're technically right on the drip line of this orange tree, there are feeder roots in here. So it should be all right. And if you are digging a hole like this into, say if you've got a lawn or your soil is more clay type and it's quite hard and compacted, you kind of want to, you need to amend your soil, but you kind of want to use a lot of the native soil so the tree gets used to being growing through quite a hard substrate. Whereas if you just do a nice soft potting mix for your initial planting and then it hits that hard clay wall, it's going to think it's in a pot, and that's as far as it's going to grow. It may slowly penetrate through, or you can go through and soften up the edges of the clay, put some gypsum in there and everything like that. But I find we will be using a citrus mix, soil mix. I'll be using a lot of this as well, the native soil, and a little bit of compost. The citrus mix I'm using has a slow release fertilizer in it, which will help with it over the next few months, establishing itself, giving it the right nutrients that it needs. Now we've got our whole depth. We've kept a little bit of the native soil, mixing the citrus and fruit mix. A little bit of compost. What do you reckon, Rigby? Ooh, lucky. So it's starting to get root bound. I mean, you tease some of these roots out. See how it's wrapping around? We don't want that, otherwise I'll just keep going that way. We want them to go outwards. Make sure it's straight. Last thing you want to do is plant a tree and it's not straight, and you're stuck with a crooked tree. Not that it's going to be crooked all the way. It will straighten itself out. And I am starting to drench my shirt. It is so hot. Now that this is planted, I might put a little bit more of the native soil back on top. But when you do them, you don't want to bury your grafting union. So if you bury it up above your grafting union, the scion itself, your variety you've chosen, will start to produce its own roots again. If it does that, it'll become susceptible. It'll become prone to the diseases that it can catch. Also, it will revert back to just its original growth habits, whereas you need that rootstock to dictate what this part of the tree is doing. So always keep that part of the tree exposed. Next, before we go any further, I'm going to completely drench this whole area. Same principle as dipping the root ball in the bucket of water. We need to drench it to get all that air out of there and also compact everything into place. Alright, while that is wetting it through, the next part, because this is an active growth and we don't want it to be concentrating on new growth and fruiting and everything like that, we want it to concentrate on its roots. We need to go through and prune off a lot of the active growth that's on it and that one apple that it's started to develop. So we'll be putting a lot of energy into that. So we want to take off these. I lost my big pruners, these ones suck. Now that that's thoroughly watered in, it should hopefully mitigate, slow down some of the transplant shock. Will give the tree plenty of water to drink through the day while it tries to settle itself in. Next, we need to prune off a lot of this active growth and start the beginnings of how we want to train this tree. Because we want it to focus on its roots, a lot of this new growth needs to come off. So we'll actually put a lot of energy into this new growth instead of its roots if we don't. So we want to take off the first foot of branches anyway. So you don't need branches that low. We don't need this tag anymore. We don't need little apple. See you later, little apple. You're not growing on the best branch anyway. So a lot of these lower guys that are just growing straight out like that, you want to get rid of because they're going to serve no purpose bar being annoying once the tree starts to get bigger, because it's going to just come straight out like that. We could start to train it like that. If we get a bit of string, tie it around, which I might actually do with these two, and start training them up, because you want a lot of your branches to go on a 45, 75 upwards. And any ones that are a little bit too vertical, you can actually wedge a piece of wood between to train them out, and then they'll start doing that, which I think I'll do with this guy. First, we'll take this one off just above the leaf node. Same with this one. When you do prune them, you want to prune them just above the leaf node, which is these little nodules right here and there. From there, a new branch can stem off. Take this one just here. And that should work. And that is my finished product for now, at least. So I've used a bit of natural twine to tie around this branch here and this one here, just to bring them up a little bit. I ended up pruning off the other one that I thought I was going to sort of train up. I figured it just wasn't worth it. Got rid of it. Got rid of all the recent active growth. Essentially that's basically dead-ended it, so these will start branching out from the top of all their own. They'll fork out basically. And then that's it for now. I'll let it do its thing. I'll just keep an eye on it. Obviously with that twine, I don't want it to be cutting into the trunk or anything like that, so keep an eye on that. Let it grow through this summer into next winter. Generally when, because these are deciduous trees, they lose all their leaves over winter, they go dormant. That's when you want to do your pruning and a lot of your training. You can do summer pruning, which kind of helps a bit. That's a different topic. But that's about it. I would do the same process with the lemon. Get that sorted, get that into place, and hopefully in the next couple of years we'll have some fruit and a lot more fruit trees and chickens. The end goal with this orchard is the chickens will have run of this orchard during the day, and then they can go back to their coop at night. So that's going to be really cool. I can't wait for that. Coming out here during the day, chilling under the fruit trees with chickens. Other than that, see you in the next one.